We are at Netroots Nation, and we have a fabulous guest in person who we are talking to. We have Senator Jamie Raskin. He is in the Maryland State Senate. He's representing District 8, which is Montgomery County. I love Montgomery County people. And he is running for Congress. He's also a professor of constitutional law, which is going to come in handy in this election, I think, at the American University. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited that you're here. This election season has been kind of a disaster. It has been very entertaining. At one point in my political career, I said, maybe we need a reality show on politics in order to get people more interested. I have taken that back.
Yeah, you got your wish.
I do not want that. I don't want that wish anymore. And we've seen the tenor and the conversation and the truthfulness go down. Washington Post just released a report of Pinocchios per elected leader, and Donald Trump had the most Pinocchios. In fact, it found that he speaks with more untruths than truths. So my question for you is, in this unprecedentedly weird political time, what is it like to be running for Congress?
Well, that's a good frame for understanding it, because Trump has collapsed the distinction between politics and entertainment. And he does have his finger on the pulse of pop culture. I mean, he understands the Kardashian people and all of the different reality show families and pop culture items that are out there in a pretty profound and deep way. But there's no real political education of people. And so he's thriving on an environment in which people are not constitutionally literate, people are not really politically literate. The union membership has declined to almost historic lows. Public education is not getting people ready for meaningful citizenship. And there are a lot of conspiracy theories and bizarre ideas that are coursing through the body politic. So it's a dangerous time. So I have staked it all on the ideal of politics as real education, educating people about how the process works, educating people about the Constitution, educating people about our rights and our responsibilities, educating people about the issues and engaging seriously with them. So I just came through the most expensive congressional primary in American history, where more than $20 million was spent. We were outspent like 10 to 1. We were able to raise and spend $2 million with more than 15,000 individual donors. Our average contribution was under $100. And we ran a door-to-door campaign, and we had more than 150 events in people's living rooms and their backyards and so on. And we were able to go and to organize people who were engaged in different social movements, the labor movement and the peace movement and the women's movement and pro-choice and Black Lives Matter, and I had the endorsement of the Hispanic Democratic Club and the African American Democratic Club. And so we had a very powerful grassroots campaign against big money.
And you won, people. He won.
We won.
And this is important, because right now we're seeing a lot of people, what I'm calling regressive voters. People are saying, that's it. I can't stand it anymore. My vote doesn't really matter, particularly when they're looking at the candidates at the very top.
Yeah, well, that just plays into right-wing politics.
Matter.
Yeah,
the votes matter. It matters.
It is a conscious, deliberate right-wing strategy to demoralize everybody in the country.
And it is demoralizing.
To make people believe that democracy doesn't work, that democratic government sucks, that legislatures are a waste of time, and so on. In the meantime, the right wing is running away with the show in terms of public policy. And the Supreme Court, which has declared that corporations are just groups of people, and the CEOs can write infinite amounts of money in checks into political campaigns. And there's just nonstop propaganda on there. I went back to my hotel last night, and I couldn't believe the right-wing propaganda that the people of St. Louis and Missouri are being fed in this election cycle by people running for Congress and governor and Senate and so on. So, but the alternative, it's the only alternative we've got, and we've got to seize it, is to organize people, educate people, and to refuse to accept the constant dumbing down of American politics.
Absolutely. So, we have listeners out there who are frustrated and who have very little time. I think one of the factors that's happening right now is people in the United States of America work more hours than most any other country in the world. And we've got a situation where 80% of low-wage workers don't have access to a single paid sick day, even though everybody gets sick. And so in that context, there's very little time for actually exploring and fact-checking each candidate when the media seems to have given up on fact-checking. I mean, some are kind of stepping up right now. I love PolitiFact. Listeners out there, go to PolitiFact. Check out PolitiFact. Washington Post is doing a good job with their Pinocchio checking, but they can't do everything. And so for listeners out there who are saying, I need to help find out what's the difference between truth and fiction, and there's so much fiction, unprecedented lies going on. What advice do you have for people who are listening so that they don't give up?
Well, yeah, and it's a scary thing because people have a responsibility to educate their kids about real American history and about American government and about the constitutional system and how things actually work. And Donald Trump, who not only prevaricates constantly but contradicts himself within the same sentence, has been spreading all kinds of conspiracy theories. I mean, the general form of it is, well, I don't know, but a lot of people are telling me that Senator Cruz's father killed John F. Kennedy.
I know.
And then suddenly that's put out there for millions of people to be talking about.
Yes.
And that's his form of political education.
And it doesn't even make sense. I mean, just people out there, the years don't even add up. The numbers don't add up. There's nothing that makes sense about that statement. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And you know what? He spread it far enough, though, that I Googled it, and I made sure that the years didn't add up. But he got me Googling it, right?
Yeah.
And that's a problem in and of itself.
Well, and it spreads a paranoid style.
Yeah.
And the idea is to sow as much fear as possible in the public. And, you know, one way of reading this campaign is it's been right-wing populism versus progressive populism. You know, it's he's saying to the dispossessed and the economically marginalized people, your problem is Mexicans, your problem is Muslims, your problem is immigrants versus what Bernie Sanders was saying, which is that there are strategic policies that have been put into place to try to redistribute money upwards in the country. You know, and so I'm glad that Sanders and Clinton have gotten together because we do need a progressive populist message to people about how public policy has really been derailed by very elitist policies in the country that benefit small numbers of people.
To the point of Trump's rhetoric, which you just brought up, thank you for bringing it up. One of the things that is important that we're finding in studies, including by a recent study from the Southern Poverty Law Center, is that rhetoric is actually harming our children. So it's not just bad policy, it's not just weird policy that contradicts itself and is unconstitutional in many cases, it's also actually harming children. So there was a study that was done and they
about
found
the rise
that,
of bullying.
Yes,
yeah.
2/3 of teachers are finding more bullying in their classroom, and Trump is being mentioned.
Well,
They're
Trump is a bully.
I
mean,
yes.
Trump wants to be what has traditionally been the country's lead role model, right? The
Yes.
President of the United States. And he proceeds by bullying. He bullied everybody else in the Republican primary contest. I mean, he talked about their looks, he talked about their families, he ridiculed people, he castigated people. And I mean, you know, if I were Hillary Clinton, I'd be running a series of ads of young kids just watching Trump on TV and saying,
there's one out right
there is
now.
one? Oh,
if
good.
people go to Hillary's website, there's a fabulous, actually, I happen to love it, ad that shows is exactly that. It's kids watching Trump on TV. So at Moms Rising, where I work, we have had so many parents writing in saying, oh my gosh, I use the debates usually as a political education for my kids, but I cannot let my kids watch anymore because what Trump is saying is inappropriate.
Yeah,
and so
it's a
that
negative
cannot
education.
be, negative education, not only wrong, but inappropriate.
Yeah.
And it's not leadership. Bullying is not leadership. Now we've got a lot
You
of
shouldn't
people
let your kids watch
confused.
alone. If you watch with them and you can say, this is precisely what you don't do. You don't bully your opponents. You don't make fun of their looks. You don't, you know, say hateful things about women and so on.
Yes, it's just wrong. It's just
Yeah.
wrong. So now we've talked a lot about what's wrong. I also want to talk about what's right, because I think that there is a lot going on in the United States of America right now that is going on in the right way. And as a person who's in leadership in the Maryland State Senate, I'm sure you've seen an amazing amount of things going on in the right way. And one of the things I think people don't think about too often is that the role of government is very important in ways that we take for granted. Being able to drive to work, being able to breathe clean air, to drink clean water, being able to call 911 and have somebody come if your house is on fire. All of those things are very important. And all of those things, if we have two quick dramatic shifts in leadership, could be at risk, not to mention the fact that we have somebody running, and I'll just have to say this right now, for president who has not ruled out nuking Europe. I mean, hello, having somebody like that who's running a temper tantrums all the time, bully in chief running for, is not cool. But let's talk about what is cool. What is cool? What are your favorite things that you've seen? Where
look, I've seen democracy work. I've been able to be part of some dramatic changes in the history of our state. We abolished the death penalty because we had innocent people who'd been on death row who would have been executed had it not been for the advent of DNA evidence.
Wait, hold on, let's stop at that. Maryland abolished the death penalty, people. This is a win. This is a win. Okay,
I was the floor leader on that, and I was very proud. And, and we had the help of Kirk Bloodsworth, who was the first death row exoneree in American history because of DNA evidence, and he participated actively in it. We restored voting rights for more than 88,000 Marylanders who had been disenfranchised because they were ex-felons.
Excellent.
We banned military-style assault weapons. We passed mandatory fingerprint licensing for people purchasing guns, which
also
deters straw purchases, fake purchasers who go in and purchase a gun for someone who's a felon or someone who's otherwise disqualified for a gun. We passed dramatic environmental legislation to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in our state. We passed the DREAM Act, so children from undocumented families could go to college at in-state tuition prices in Maryland. So I've seen democracy work. We're making progress. It's that kind of progress that is driving the right wing crazy in America. They want to go back to a situation where gay people are invisible or can be objects of discrimination. You don't have to serve them if you don't want to. That's what the new running mate for Donald Trump says. Basically, businesses shouldn't have to serve gay people who are placing orders for, weddings or what have you.
So ridiculous, so wrong.
Look, America today in 2016 is different from what America was like 25 years ago or 50 years ago. And a lot of parts of the country are dealing with it. We're celebrating it. We're building the diversity in. And some people can't handle it. And that's why the Trump campaign is filled with racists and anti-Semites and anti-immigrant bigots of all types.
And it's not just hateful, it's wrong. It's wrong for our economy, because when we look at what builds our economy, we're seeing that the immigrant engine, for example, is boosting our small and large businesses.
Sure.
We're seeing that diversity actually gives businesses better returns on their investments. We're seeing that when we invest in people who then spend money in our consumer economy, our economy is based 72% on consumer spending, so that when we invest in people, that's actually investing in our country and in our economy in ways that are unprecedented. So they're not only bigoted, awful, and wrong, they're actually hurting our economy. That's
right. And look, when we finally grow up and deal with the immigration problem in a serious way, and we bring millions of people in out of the shadows, that's going to be an important key to renewing the solvency of Social Security for many decades, because the immigrant population is overwhelmingly young. People are working hard, and when they're paying into the Social Security system, that's going to be a huge boost to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we have had on with us right now Jamie Raskin, who is running for Congress in the state of Maryland. Again, running for Congress in the state of Maryland, Jamie Raskin. Thank you, Jamie, for being on with us and for all that you do to make democracy work for real.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.